chapeau for the Sustainable Development Goals. Let's keep our eye on the ball, what we want to do with our societies.
So Michael, can you talk us through the Sustainable Development Goals and how would they be of interest to Dukascopy viewers and also investors?
The Sustainable Development Goals are the UN's latest, I wouldn't say attempt, but latest major program to get development going. They came out of the Millennium Development Goals, which were designed in the year 2000, which focused essentially on anti-poverty issues. They claim a certain amount of success of them because poverty is reduced quite sharply over the last 15 or 20 years. But it seems that most of that came from China because of the large rates of growth in China, where poverty is actually amazing. It's gone down probably to less than a third of what it was before. And of course, China being such a big country, that means that global levels of poverty reduce very, very sharply. So the Millennium Development Goals are successful, but mainly because of China. But then how much did the UN have to do with the success of China? Not very much. It was essentially the private sector in China and the small and medium-sized enterprises and some of the big companies which were exporting around the world thanks to favorable trade regimes. So the private sector actually incredibly influential in reducing poverty in China. Less so in other parts of the world. It's difficult to generalize, of course, but there have been certainly some advances. There's also great work by a lot of the UN agencies like UNICEF with children, the World Health Organization, and now working with the Gates Foundation, the United Nations Development Program, where I've done quite a lot of work with some of the think tanks that are working there on these issues, which led to the Sustainable Development Goals. Is this just another UN expression? I don't think so. I think looking through them, there are 17 goals now, and they're mainly aspirational. The sorts of things they have is things like sustainable cities and communities, decent work and economic growth, peace and justice, and partnerships to meet the goals. So the private sector is explicitly mentioned this time in the Sustainable Development Goals, and they were hardly involved at all in the Millennium Development Goals, which started, that was the period, the year 2000 to the year 2015. The Sustainable Development Goals this year, 2016, and to the year 2030. This time, too, there was much more consultation amongst all the various stakeholders in the world about the Sustainable Development Goals. And the private sector actually were consulted and had lots of meetings with them right across the world. And I think there's some excitement in companies and also even big companies. I know one can be cynical about companies. However, companies are our creation. We create them to create the products that we need. Now, if you look at the Sustainable Development Goals, and for Dukascopy viewers who are involved in investment issues and investment banking and finance and so on, I think there's a lot of mileage there. For instance, sustainable cities and communities. What does that mean? It means a radical change in architecture and how we run our cities. Affordable and clean energy. Well, we've heard a lot about alternative energy, but it's a big thing. Well, oil prices have gone down, as we know. You remember the tennis ball theory of investing? I was right about that, by the way, boys and girls. But what's happening is that oil prices are going up again. But it starts making alternative energy systems more feasible again. And so for investors who suddenly stopped investing in alternative energy, maybe that was too premature, so there's something there. So in a nutshell, I think there are lots and lots of things for the private sector and investment in these goals. And let me just cap that with saying it's 192 or 193 countries who will report back to the UN regularly over the next 15 years on how they're doing on these goals. And the UN wants to attract lots of private investment and private capital, as well as the normal government investment, to achieve these goals. So I think it's rather exciting. I know today it's a rather gloomy looking at the world for lots of reasons, which we might talk about a little bit in a minute. But I think there's a huge area and new areas for investment in the future. And I think private companies and large corporations, small and medium sized, will be well advised to start looking at what's going on here. Actually go on their website and see what's in it for you. Interesting, I think.
And Michael, the big issue at hand at the moment is Islamic migration and terrorism. So you've said that private sectors and development are the key issues to solve this, but after the Brussels issues that we've recently seen, what can actually be done?
Yeah, this is incredibly distressing, and this is just a few days after that awful incident. I feel so sorry for the people who are injured. I mean, they've got to live with that for the rest of their lives. Maybe your neighbour comes from one of these countries, but maybe they're having problems too. We look out for each other. That's humanity. That's what we do. Terrorism wants to destroy that. We don't want to live in a world like that. It's absolutely horrible. So this is the big issue of the day. I've been actually working in Africa on that issue, trying to create 1 million jobs in Somalia, and it's been tough going because weapons are king in our military. It's got to change to more intelligence, more thinking, and then more thinking about human rights and development. In fact, there's even more less money for development than there used to be. It's going into weapons and peacekeeping and the rest of it. So, chapeau for the Sustainable Development Goals. Let's keep our eye on the ball, what we want to do with our societies. We want to live together. We want to enjoy talking with each other. And we want to create humanity, and we want respect for human rights and respect for the law and respect for our neighbours.
Michael, thank you so much once again for coming in.
Thank you very much.
That's all once again from myself and Michael, but for all the latest updates and exclusive interviews, keep clicking back. Goodbye for now.